Right then, boys, I want to tackle a subject which looks into the depths of philosophy. And the idea behind this is that you decide your bedtime. Okay? Now, it's a very strange concept because you think to yourself, Chris, what do you mean you decide your bedtime? And by the way, I hope you can't hear my washing machine. So if that's loud, I do apologize, but you shouldn't be able to. And you think to yourself, what are you talking about bedtime? You're a 33-year-old man. What are you trying to teach us? Well, think about it, right? When you're a kid, everyone controls you, everyone tells you what to do. They tell you when to go to bed, they tell you when to go to school, when you can leave, when you can go to the toilet, what you have to eat. And for some people it's good, it's a form of control, and for some people it's bad, and it ruins their life. That's how you get obese kids at 14, people who have abusive parents or were in a school that just wasn't fit for purpose, and they come out the other end and they are not set up for life whatsoever in any way, shape or form. However, one thing that I think is not discussed in modern society, especially for modern men, is that number one, we are purposeless. Okay, so until you've actually found something you want to do, you are purposeless. Until you don't have the luxury that women have where they know they're going to get married and have kids. As a man, you're like, I have no idea. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'd like to think I will, but I have no idea what I'm going to do. And until you find said purpose, you are just walking lost throughout the world. Now, secondly, and this never gets discussed, is that you decide your bedtime. Now, you decide your bedtime is a metaphor for everything else that comes off the back of it. And what I mean by you decide your bedtime is you are in complete control of your own life for the first time in your existence. Now, I learned this when I was living for the first time on my own, and I'd lived away from home for a long time, but with other people. And I had my mentor around me and stuff, so you always had somebody else to lean on. But it was the first time I actually lived on my own in London. And I did a week of work, and they paid me, I remember they paid me early because it was the final week of the month. And they said, to get you started, because London's expensive, we'll give you your first month's rent up front or your first month's paycheck up front. And then when you leave the company, we'll deduct it because we assume you're going to have a pay rise and whatnot. And I was like, yeah, sounds great. So after that week of work, I was tired. I went to bed. I woke up I think I got paid on the Friday night. And then on the Saturday, I woke up and I said to myself, oh my God, I have money in the bank. I'm in London. I'm on my own. What should I do? And I started drinking red wine, listening to music and watching TV shows and having the time of my life. And I was eating food. I was scoffing dark chocolate for breakfast. And I was like, do you know what? Let's go to Shoreditch and get some street food. Let's just go for it. Went down to Shoreditch, got some street foods, and within probably 30 minutes, I'd sobered up. And I had a hangover. And I was like, oh my God, it's like 1 p.m. and all I want to do is just go home. I was like, I just feel lost. I've just spent loads of money. What the hell am I doing? I need to get home. This was a stupid idea. And I came home by about 2:30. I got into bed. I fell asleep until around about 9 p.m. And I woke up and I just said to myself, do you know what? You've just wasted a whole day. What the hell were you doing? You lost control. You didn't really, like, with great power comes great responsibility kind of thing. And it's like you were just too immature to handle freedom. You didn't know what you were doing. You know, it's almost like a dad saying to the daughter, I trust you, don't sleep around, like, I'm sure you're going to pick a good guy. And she goes and gets a body count of 300. You'd be like, oh, for fuck's sake. Do you know what I mean? It just wouldn't feel right. So I woke up on the Sunday, I did my washing, I did my laundry, I went back to this brand because I gave this brand a break. And I was like, I need to get back to who I was and I need to start working on things again. I realized in that moment I was a good guy. I was like, I'm a good person, I'm disciplined. I think I'm the type of person, and I've never tested this and I never will, who could take crystal meth on Monday and by Tuesday be like, nah, I'm never going to do it again. I could do cocaine 400 days in a row and on 401 go, I'm not really feeling it anymore. I think I'm going to quit. I just have this level of discipline that as soon as I realize something is slipping away from me, I'm able to just snap it back immediately and revert back to type. It's the same with diet. I have a tiramisu, cheesecake, I might have a glass of red wine, you know, I might have something slightly sugary, and then the next day I might fast for 24 hours and then it's nothing but steak and eggs and water for like the next 2 months. And I've always had this ability, and I think it's probably one of the most important factors in male life. Like, it decides whether you're going to be in shape, whether you're going to be successful, what type of life you have. The fact that you decide your bedtime. And what I mean by that is you have the choice. When you live alone, you become a man, and you have full domain over who you are and what you do. You decide what you eat. When you go to the supermarket and you do your shopping, you decide what you spend your money on. You decide what time you go to bed. You decide if you want to lie in bed to 1 a.m. masturbating and watching anime. You decide if you're hungry, am I going to cook something or am I going to order Deliveroo? You decide if your house is going to be dirty. You decide what it's going to look like, how it's going to be designed. And then when you have kids, they become a byproduct of you. And they live the same way that you do. The point I am making here, and it is so important, and I hope everybody's getting the idea behind this, is that you are in full control of your entire life and your habits. Who you become, where you live, who you are, who you hang around with, who you date, who your kids grow up to become. Are you the type of family that eats pizza and fizzy drinks? Or are you the type of family that goes on a run on a Sunday morning and everyone stays healthy and fit? You decide if you have a gym membership or you have Netflix, Prime, Amazon, Disney, etc. Well, there's two of those are the same. But you get my point. I think I meant Apple. But you decide. You decide if you have pizza 3 nights a week and you do Deliveroo and Uber Eats and all this stuff, or you decide if you learn how to cook. You decide if you're the type of person who's going to be frugal with his money, or you're going to spend it on alcohol, nights out, and be getting in at 4 a.m. on a Saturday. Like, the amount of excuses that people use is ridiculous. The amount of excuses I've seen people say, I'd be successful if the last 6 months weren't so hard. No, incorrect. You would be successful if you sorted your shit out 8 years ago. That's the truth of it. And the way that you sort your shit out, the way that you design your life is completely up to you. Everything that you do, every factor in your life. Every time you sit down for 2 hours at night and you watch TV, which is absolutely fine, that's human behavior, I have no problem with it. But somebody else is choosing to read a book and learn a language. So do not be pissed off when he is walking around with a beautiful French woman that he met when he went to France one weekend. You can't be annoyed. You cannot be annoyed if you bring a woman back to your house and it's filthy and there's dust everywhere and there's shit stains in the toilet. You cannot be annoyed if it smells horrible and she goes, yeah, I think my friend's just messaged, I need to go. Because that is the type of man you are and that's who you've decided to be. That is completely up to you. You decide every single facet of your own life. And that's why I always say, you decide your bedtime. That's why I keep pushing it towards you guys, because it's such a simple thing and it's a metaphor of going from parents to your own devices. And it's so important. You have never in your life had to think about bedtime. You have never in your life had to think about being organized. You have never in your life had to think about, have I paid the bills? You have never in your life had to think about, should I get an accountant? Wait, hang on a minute. Like, my house is dirty. My clothes are dirty. I have to clean them. I'm out of food and I've got no money. What am I going to do? Am I going to steal? And is that who I am? Or am I going to work a little bit harder and become... Your whole life is just decisions. Your whole life. Who you are as a person, who you end up becoming, how your life plans out, everything is a decision. And it's a daily decision. And I wrote a book years ago where it talks about the chain reaction of decisions. And I truly believe if you make 10 bad decisions in a row, you're probably going to have a bad month. Everything's going to be a catalyst off the back of that. But I think if you make something like 50 perfect decisions in a row, I think there's knock-on effects down the line. Like, I think the more perfect decisions or good decisions you make in a row, the more there is a knock-on effect where, you know, a year's time, like if you have perfect decisions for a whole month, in a year's time, you're still benefiting from that month. You know, I'm benefiting from today, from decisions I made at 21, 22, to stay in, go to the gym, start Autotropics, and start focusing on business. You know, decisions I made a year and a half ago to start a members club, or a little bit more than that, probably closer to, it's coming up 2 years now. It's crazy when I actually came up with the idea. But it's about, you know, it's besides the point. But like roughly 2 years ago, the decisions that I made then are paying off now. Do you see what I mean? They were good decisions and there was some bad sprinkled in, but I'd say that the majority were good and it's led to where I am today. You know, financial decisions that you make every day. Do you want to go and get a coffee and a croissant? Okay, well, it's going to add up. It's going to add up on your waistline, number one, with the croissant, and it's going to add up in terms of, maybe £400 a month just on a coffee and a croissant every day, which is just stupid. That's a ludicrous way to live your life. The way that you decide to speak, the way you decide to conduct yourself in public, if you just decide that you want to be the confident guy when you walk into any room, you can do that. You have the power to do it. If you want to be the guy that balls out of control and lives month to month, you can be that guy. And like I said, these are all bigger decisions, but it's the real fundamental core decisions of, I'm going to eat well, go to the gym, and I'm going to go to bed early. That's where life is won or lost, in my opinion. I'm going to be somebody who wakes up on a Sunday very early, goes to the gym, comes back, cleans my house, eats something healthy, reads a book, learns a language, and then spends 4 hours on my business and then goes for a nightly walk. That type of person will become a type of person. Okay? So this is when they say you have to see it here first and then see it in person. Because everything is a decision. Everything that you do. You go, right, who do I want to be? I'll give you a prime example. When it came to NoFap, which I don't talk about at all anymore. I think it's so distant I tend to say that people talk about what is relevant in their life at the time, and it's just something that was never relevant in my life. It was never a thought because it became part of who I was. But in the early days, it was very much, I'd want to do it. It was in my brain. I was like, I want to do it. And then I'd think, would James Bond do this? And I was like, I just can't picture it. I can't picture Daniel Craig, James Bond, sat there with his trousers around his ankle, beating his dick, worried about if somebody's going to come in, closing the curtains. And I was like, so if I can't picture that, why would I then do it? Because I don't want to be the type of man that does do it. If the men that I respect don't do it, why would I do it? So that became a conscious decision. I had this vision of James Bond, Daniel Craig, and the type of men that I wanted to be. So then I acted it out in here, which then became part of who I was here, which then became part of who I was as a man moving forward in life. And that's how everything is done. You decide your bedtime. You decide your diet. Your kids will be a reflection of you. The people around you will be a reflection of who you've become. If you are a fitness fanatic, not many of your friends are going to be fat. I can promise you that. If you are fat, not many of your friends are going to be attractive supermodels. It's just people surround themselves with similar people. And you decide what circles you walk in. You decide how you speak, how you are perceived by the world. You decide if massive investors would invest in you because you're the type of guy who is clean cut, wears a suit, speaks a certain way, pronunciates his words, doesn't use words like fam and bruv, and you end up making more money because of that conscious decision one day to start talking in a different manner to anybody else, to start pronouncing your words properly. That's all it takes. That is all it takes. And it is so simple. You decide who you're going to be. You decide, am I going to move away from these friends and become somebody of worth? Am I the type of person who goes to the pub every Saturday night and I can't give in? Or do I want to make a conscious decision to not be that person and I want to get up at 5 a.m. rather than come through the door at 5 a.m., which some people call it a Saturday night, I would call it a Sunday morning. And that is the difference. That's a conscious decision. 5 a.m. for me is a Sunday morning. 5 a.m. for a lot of people is Saturday night, the end of the weekend. The end of a night out. They're hungover, they're drunk, whatever, they get into bed and the whole of Sunday they're monging out when I've already been awake for 10 hours. And I've been productive, I've got loads of shit done, and Monday is a softer sell. I'm like, I can't wait for Monday. I've got momentum, my mind's good, I don't feel depressed, and I have been that guy in the past, but that's what I said, it's just a conscious decision every single time. It's so simple. You decide your bedtime. I hope this helps, guys.